Thank you, Pauline. Good afternoon. It's a difficult time to try and have a conversation now. It's a Friday and it's an afternoon. So I hope there's still some level of concentration left. I'll try and be 10 minutes. Just a couple of things I'll highlight. I mean, I was here yesterday and it was very inspiring listening to the stories and things that are happening. But as I was reflecting in this, I remembered one of the most famous quotes in the world, and interestingly, it's by either Lenin or Karl Marx, which says, philosophers have analyzed the world, however, the point is to change it. So for me, I think if there's anything we've taken as an approach in the province is that do something. With the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, and for those who were here yesterday, I explained a little bit of what we do. With the official entity that does trade and investment promotion in Gauteng, we owned by the provincial government through the Department of Economic Development. So we're not for profit. The things we're doing are to contribute to growing the economy. And one of the things we've accepted that is going to contribute to growing this economy is export promotion, finding new markets for products that are done in South Africa, but also to look at investors from other parts of the world who are seeing opportunities that we may not be seeing, or giving us skills we may not have, or showing us new ways of doing things so that we can grow our economy. And the continent is our natural partner. I think most of you who are not from South Africa, when you came to Johannesburg, there's a sense of being at home. You can relate to Johannesburg better than you can relate to some of the Western cities. And for us, that's because our cultures are similar. We have existing logistics where we can travel. Traveling around the continent is getting a little better. But we said the first step is goods follow people. You've got to facilitate the movement of people. One of the things in the continent for the longest time, moving around is costly, or visas are a problem. So we engage a lot with the embassies on how we can make it easy for business people from South Africa going to the rest of the continent to get visas, but from the rest of the continent coming into South Africa to get visas. So we look at the different regions, and for the purposes of this, we're asked to talk about West Africa, and particularly Ghana and Nigeria. And because we're a subnational government, we're a province, we can't be everywhere. So we pick places where to start, where we think there are similarities and maybe things we can achieve in the short term, and then we will grow from there. So in Ghana, we went to Accra, and we're looking at doing a formal cooperation with Accra. We already have one existing with the Ghana Investment Promotion Agency. When we went to Nigeria, we're looking at cooperating with the state of Lagos. The Premier and the MEC met with the governor of Lagos, and they've been invited to come to South Africa and enhance the cooperation and the discussions that we've had. Now, I mean, it's a no-brainer that there are two things in the continent that have got to be addressed. One are the demographics. We have a youthful population, it's growing very fast, and we've got to respond to the needs. But the other bit is infrastructure. Whether it is water and sanitation, whether it is roads, whether it is telecoms, because again, to have a Google, to have an Uber, you need some infrastructure that supports those initiatives. Bandwidth. Do we have bandwidth roads? Do we have roads that function? Can we get things in and out of our continent as quickly as we would want? So those are some of the areas of cooperation that we've looked at. We have South African companies that have looked at setting up in those countries. One is a tile manufacturer that was looking at producing tiles for the West African market, and they were looking at energy, security of supply and cost of energy. There are South African companies already invested in energy in West Africa, renewable energy projects. There are some also involved in bus manufacturing projects, and bus rapid transit system. So at a company-to-company level, there already is some activity because naturally business people, when they see opportunity, they will go. There are ICT companies from South Africa that are in the rest of the continent. But also we're seeing both from Ghana and Nigeria a lot more investments coming into South Africa, ICT, property, and a bit of private equity. So there are really things that are happening, and people who are not waiting for governments to help them, but where governments can really come to the party is to enable things and make them happen either faster or happen a little bit better. One of the things we also find a little bit with investors, especially from the continent, is what does it take to take money into South Africa and outside of South Africa as an investor. The easiest way is to deal with banks. They deal with the Reserve Bank and they can facilitate that. But other things like revenue services, compliance, establishing a company, or even there's a gentleman I just spoke to now who's looking at textiles, we can give him a list of top 10 or 20 companies that do South African-made products, and he can choose out of that. Again, because we're not an entity that's for profit, so we have no reason to promote this one over the other. It's creating opportunities for everybody else. So from where we sit, there's really a lot of opportunity in the continent if you look at certain regions. I mean, West Africa, in terms of population, is probably the biggest, driven by Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria is almost 4 times the population of South Africa. So that's a natural market for South African companies, but also Nigerians over time from oil and many other sectors have developed capital, and that capital is looking for yields around the world, and we would like to see some of those investments happening. We have already had some notable businessmen like Mr. Dangote, who's already invested in a cement plant, but other than that, there's hundreds of Nigerian businessmen and women who are already in Gauteng and investing in different sectors. So really, from us and Ghana and South Africa have had a very long history. I come from the Eastern Cape. When I went to high school, there were a lot of teachers who were from Ghana who were actually physically teaching in the Eastern Cape schools. So there's been those relationships. Kwame Nkrumah is one of the most respected leaders in the continent. And when South Africa was going through its own difficulties, the rest of the continent was there to support. So there's always a bit of affinity between South Africans and the rest of the continent on how we deal with each other. So back to, I said I'll take only 10 minutes. Back to what I think are the key points for us in how we see the cooperation is, as a subnational government, we deal with certain cities and certain provinces or states in the countries that we look at, and on that we identify certain things that are a priority, and one of them is visas to allow for the movement of people. And there's a different regime that we follow on dealing with corporates that want to come to South Africa. The second one is, I think infrastructure is clear, there's a lot of investment required. ICT are industries of the future, and we do export promotion. We have been a mining town in South Africa for a long time, which has made us develop a big capability on manufacturing related to mining, but even other heavy industries like steel, capital equipment. So there is opportunity as well to export capital equipment to the rest of the world, but we also encourage South African companies to invest where they are. So if you go to Cote d'Ivoire, not only export, yes, it's good for us to export, but if there's a possibility to set up a factory and buy what you can buy local, what you can't buy local, we then encourage that you buy from South Africa. So there is, from where we sit, a lot of capacity in South Africa to grow and export, and we want to facilitate those as easily as possible. So you can go to our website, the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, or you can go to the Gauteng Investment Center. It's based in Sentin on 1 Sentin Drive, and there's always people there who are willing to help. Thank you. I'm Saki Zamxaka, CEO of the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. We're happy to participate in the Tropics Summit, which brings together more than 15 countries, mainly in the continent. We think promoting trade in the continent is very important and bringing down barriers to people movement. And this is one of the great platforms to achieve exactly that. We're happy that it is in Gauteng and encourage everyone to participate in it. We understand next year it may be somewhere in Central Africa, and we also encourage participants here to continue supporting it.